Hi guys and welcome in this new tutorial. So today I'm going to show you the simplest way to authenticate your users in your Next.js application. In this tutorial I will do everything from scratch, so if you want to look at something in particular you can fast forward the video. But as you'll see, we'll do it in under 10 minutes, so it will be very fast. To do it so fast, we'll use a service named Cobalt.io. This service will allow you to add authentication, permissions, and also to monetize your SaaS application using built-in components, but I will show you that later in this video. So here is the kind of customer portal and authentication interface you'll get in this tutorial. And the good thing about it is everything comes built in with Cobble. So you won't have to code this authentication portal. You will be able to customize it, but Cobble provides it built in. Now this intro is long enough, so let's jump right into it. So the first thing you can do to get started with Cobble is go to the documentation on docs.cobalt.io. Here I'm on the Next.js quick start, but before starting with Next.js, we'll just follow the setup Cobble section to set up our Cobble account. So to do so, it's very easy. You just have to sign in on Cobble.io and then you have to create a new project. So we'll do it together. Here I already have a project, but I will do it from scratch, so I will create a new project. I will name it Next.js Auth, and I create my project. Now you can see I have many instructions here depending on the SDK I want to use, but I will just follow for now the tutorial provided in the documentation. So now we created a project, we can configure the authentication for our users. So on my Cobalt dashboard, I can go to authentication and I can activate the authentication providers I want. So here I will activate the magic link sign-in, which means my users will be able to sign in with the magic link sent by email. And I will also activate a social provider such as Google. So to configure the Google authentication, I need to pass my client ID and client secret provided by Google. So I will create those right now. I will go to my console on Google Cloud Platform. And you have to go on API and services, credentials, and here on that page, you have to create a new credential, which will be an auth client ID. Now on application type, I select web application and I will name it. So for example, Next Auth. Here I have to provide an authorized redirect URI. If I go to my Cobalt dashboard, this redirect URI is provided by Cobalt. So I will copy it and I will paste it here. So I will create my auth client ID and now I can copy and paste the client ID and client secret on my Cobalt project. I enable it and I save it. And that's about it, guys. We already configured the authentication and I have a customer portal which is working and I will show you that in a minute. So if you go to customer portal, here you'll have everything related to your Cobalt customer portal. So in a nutshell, the customer portal is where your users will be able to sign in, sign up, manage their subscription, view your pricing and manage their profile. This customer portal is entirely provided built-in by Cobble. So if you have a look here, you can see the URL provided by Cobble, which links to your customer portal that Cobble created for you. So I will open it. And as you can see, I can already sign in and I have the email sign in because I configured it. And I also have the Google sign in because I configured it as well. So I can click on continue with Google. I will use my account, I accept everything, and now I'm redirected to my customer portal and I can see the pricing. As you can see, Cobalt also provided a free product for us. We won't cover product and monetization in this video, but if you go on the Cobalt monetization section, you'll see you'll be able to create multiple products in order to manage permissions of your application and sell products and subscriptions to your users. But no worries, guys, we'll cover that in the next tutorial. So on this customer portal, my users can manage their subscription. They will be able to later subscribe to my other products, and they will also be able to manage their account and view their profile. And again, I haven't done anything else yet. So everything you're seeing now is provided by Cobalt. One last word about this customer portal. If you go to the customer portal section on Cobble, you'll see you'll be able to customize it. You can add your logo, you can change the color theme, you can add legal information, a custom domain, or some custom script, which could be useful, for example, if you want to add Google Analytics or Amplitude or, even Intercom on your customer portal. To keep it simple, we won't do it in this video, but I will let you explore that part on your own. Now we created our own customer portal using Cobalt. We want to create our own Next.js application in order to authenticate our users and provide a service to them. So let's jump right into it. I will go to the Cobalt documentation and follow the next quick start. So basically, I will just run npx create next app to create and scaffold my Next.js application. So I open my terminal and I will do it. I will use some configuration here. You don't necessarily have to use the same, especially here I'm using the src directory. I know that many people won't use it, so it will only change the location of the middleware.ts file that we'll create later. But yeah, you don't have to use the exact same config. I just like to use this one. One important thing is we'll use the app router, and this is the recommended way by Next.js to configure new Next.js applications. And if you want to use Cobalt, it's mandatory to use this kind of configuration. My project is created. I will open it in my favorite code editor. Okay, so we have our new Next.js project. Now what we're going to do is to install the Cobble Next SDK. So I will run npm install cobble.io/next. Next step is to create a middleware. The middleware will handle the private and public routes on your application. As you can see, you can pass some public routes to your middleware, which means those routes will be allowed for unauthenticated users. However, other routes won't be allowed to authenticated users, and the Cobalt Next SDK will manage that for you, so you won't have to focus on it. I will just copy the code provided by the documentation, and I will create a file named middleware.ts. Here I will create it on the src directory, and I will paste the code provided by Cobalt. What we do here is we say that everything under the root path is public. You may want to do something else. For example, you may want to add something like /public and say, okay, everything under /public is public and everything else is private and only allowed to authenticated users. But here we will use the signed in, signed out components provided by the Cobalt SDK. So I will just use it that way. This is the simplest way to get started with Cobalt. We are mostly done. The next step is to set up the Cobalt provider. So as you can see, we need to wrap our Next.js application in a Cobalt provider component, which is provided by the Cobalt SDK. And that way, the Cobalt SDK will be able to manage, the authentication and permission state of our users directly in our application. It will expose the context, server side and client side for us to manage our users. So I will just copy that layout.ts file and I will replace my layout.tsx file here by this one. As you can see, it's mostly the same as the previous one. The only difference is here we import the Cobalt provider, and instead of directly rendering the children of inside the body, what we do is we wrap the children in the Cobalt provider. And we don't have anything else to do code-wise. Now we're mostly done. Let's try to run our application. If I open it, I will get this error saying that I'm missing some environment variables, which is normal. So I will follow the documentation again. The documentation tells me I have to create a .env file to set up my environment variable. So I will copy the content of this file and I will create, a .env file. You can name it .env or .env.local as you want. And here I will paste it. Now I need to, fill this file with the right variables. So let's have a look to what I need here. I need a Cobalt client secret, I need a Cobalt client ID, I need the Cobalt domain, and the redirect URI. So let's get into it. So to get the Cobalt client secret and client ID, I need to create an auth application in my Cobalt project. Nothing too crazy, it will take less than 1 minute. So I go to my Cobalt project, I go under the application section, and here I will create a new application. The reason why you need to create a project and then an application on Cobalt is because you may have multiple applications using the same Cobalt project. Let's say, for example, you have an iOS application and a web application. Maybe you will create two applications sharing the same project. Here you can add a logo. I won't do it. I would just name it web app. I need to add an authorized redirect URI. So here the Cobalt SDK provides the callback route by default for me. So I just have to choose a path and it will work built in. But I need to provide the domain. So since I'm working on localhost here, I will enable it. So I will use HTTP localhost 3000 because my app is running on that path, and I will name it callback, but you can name it whatever I want. With the Next.js SDK it will work. So I add it and now I save my application. So now I have many things I needed for my environment. So first I have the domain URL here. I can copy it and I will add it here. Then I have the client ID and client secret. So I will copy paste those values. And I already had the localhost 3000/callback. So this is the same callback URL as this one. So we're good. If you want to use another URL, you'll just change the value here and here in your environment. Now let's try to open the app again. And now everything works perfectly. Congrats, because even if we don't see it yet on our application, we can now handle the user state and authentication with the signed in component very easily. So if you keep following the quick start guide, you'll see that you can use many components like signed in, logout button, login button, signed out, and I will show you those components right now. Let's open the main page of our Next.js application. To make it simpler, I just removed the content of the page.tsx provided by Next.js and I replaced it by this basic boilerplate. It's just a few HTML div just to make it simple. So here is how it looks. Nothing too crazy CSS wise, but that's not the focus of this tutorial. So here I created a button, which is very basic and just styled with Tailwind CSS. Obviously there is no handler, so if I click on it, nothing's happen. Now we'll see how we can make this work. So let's say I want to display some content for signed in users and some other content for signed out users. Well, I will just do it by importing some component from the Cobble Next SDK. So I will import the signed in component, the signed out component from Cobble, and I will wrap the code I want to display to signed in user in the signed in component, and likewise for the signed out components. So signed in, here I will display the login button and the welcome back title, and for signed out users I will display please authenticate message, and here and boom. So what I'm doing here is for my signed in users I display this content, and for my signed out users I display this content. Now if I have a look to it, you can see the message says please authenticate, because I'm not authenticated, which is what we wanted. However, if I click on the login button at this stage, nothing works because we haven't used the login component yet. So we'll import it. We'll import the login button and the logout button components, and we'll wrap our button inside those components. So here I will wrap that in the logout button components like this. And I will do the same for this component. with the login button component. So I don't have to attach any handler or anything. The component knows how to work with the Cobble SDK, and you don't have to think about it. So if now I click on login, I'm redirected to my customer portal. Since I authenticated previously in this tutorial on my portal, I just have to authorize it. And now I'm redirected to my app and I'm logged in. And as you can see, the content of the signed in component now appears to my users. I can log out and boom, now I can see again the unauthenticated content on my Next.js application. Now let's say when I'm authenticated, I want to display some users information like the username, for example, or the user email address. Well, I can use a hook provided by the Cobalt Next SDK, which is useAuth, and this hook allows me to access the user's information. So I will use it that way. Const user equal useAuth. And that's about it. The user can be null or can exist, depending on the fact the user is authenticated or not. But if I'm on the signed in component, the user exists. So here I will add the username, for example, user.name. What you can see is you get an error because you can do it only on the client-side component. So if you don't know the difference between server-side and client-side components in Next.js, I suggest you read the Next.js documentation. But basically, to make it simple, in this tutorial, what I will do is I will just add the use client here to let Next.js know I want to use a client-side component. And boom, what you can see is it works. I have now my username displayed on my app, and I can do the same for the user email if I want. And that's about it. Now you're probably wondering, okay, I can do this on the client side, but how can I do this on the server side? Well, Cobble exposes a lot of features, both client-side and server-side. So if you want to use the user session server-side, you just have to import the getAuth function that will allow you to get the user session as explained in the documentation, and then you'll be able to access the user on the server-side components and actions. I won't show you all the features provided by Cobalt in this tutorial because we'll cover them in other tutorials. But if you keep scrolling the quick start, you'll see that Cobalt allows you also to manage permissions with the isAllowed component and quotas with the isAllowed component as well. So I will give you more information about that in the next tutorial, but feel free to ask any questions in the comment below. Now, one last thing which is very important is you can access the full SDK reference to know what's possible to do using Cobalt on the Cobalt documentation. So if you go to Full Stack SDK and Next.js, you will see all the components available, like signed in, is allowed, is forbidden, pricing link, and so on and so forth. You'll also be able to see all the hooks available front-end side and all the server-side helpers like getAuth, get access control, get Kobble. So the Next.js SDK is fully documented and you have examples for every component, so it's very easy to get started with it. But again, if you have any question or feedback, feel free to leave a comment below. And if you like this tutorial and don't want to miss the next one, feel free to subscribe to the channel and smash the like button below. I see you in the next video, guys. I wish you a good rest of your day. Bye.